Hello everyone. In this video I want to show you how easy it is to make beer. First off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the main ingredients that go to make beer. The biggest one, of course, is water, and then malted barley, hops, and finally yeast. Water has a huge influence on the finished product, and the waters of Burton-on-Trent are famous for the pale ales of the region. Home brewers, though, have to make do with what they can get, although there are products that you can treat your water with. Not that I've ever used them. Barley is grown in many parts of Britain, looks a bit similar to wheat, and goes golden when it's harvested. It has to be malted to make beer, and this traditionally means soaking it and allowing it to germinate until just before the grain starts to sprout. That converts the starches of the grain into a sugary substance called malt. The grain is then spread out on floors and dried from underneath, nowadays on an industrial scale. The different amounts of heat and periods of time give different shades of malt, such as amber, dark, chocolate. For beer making, the brewer has to mash the malted grain. That means soaking it in water at around 65 degrees C for a couple of hours, and then the liquid's drained off and used to brew the beer. If that liquid is condensed down by evaporating off much more water, it becomes malt extract, which is much more economic to transport or sell on. Hops have been a traditional crop in the east of England. They're really tall plants, and it's the flower head which is added to the beer wort to help preserve the beer and give it a bitter or a tangy taste. There are dozens of different varieties of hops, and each gives the beer its own particular qualities. They can be added green, but they're normally dried to preserve them and make them easier to transport. Traditionally, the drying was done in oast houses, and the hops were spread out on the floors and heated from underneath. But now it's done on a much larger scale, making the oast houses redundant, and they're often used now as private residences. Hops can be given a longer life if they're vacuum packed or processed into pellets. Yeast is a naturally occurring fungus microorganism, and it feeds on sugars and converts them into alcohol and carbon dioxide. There are hundreds of varieties of yeast, and individual brewers tend to cultivate them to produce a particular type of beer. The wort is ready when it's cooled down to about 20 degrees centigrade. The yeast is pitched in. Home brewers can buy a dried version of these yeasts and simply add them to their brew at the right time. After several days, the yeast has done its work, and the beer is ready to rack off the sediment and be bottled or put into kegs.